Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, part 2 of my conversation with Gilbert Cantu of Little Jade Bonsai. If you've had the chance to listen to a couple of my Up North Bonsai podcasts, you'll know that I do a lot of talk about the seasons of the year. We talk about the summer and the winter solstices, and we talk about the fall and the spring equinoxes as well. And I did the same with Gilbert, even though we're in completely different zones, right? Texas versus upper Midwest, Minnesota for me. But we still tackled the zones to kind of see how he takes care of his PAs. We started with the summer solstice and then went to the fall equinox. Let's see what Gilbert had to say, how he takes care of his trees and what's happening those two times of the year.
Summer solstice. What are you doing in Texas, or what in that heat of summer, what are you doing to your trees? What are you doing to PAs with the summer solstice?
Watering daily and fertilizing heavy.
Okay.
Because since it does get hot, I feel like they start kind of, like I said, I have friends down the street that don't fertilize as much as me.
Mm-hmm.
They have their trees kind of out, like more full sun. The leaves are real yellow. They're a lot lighter in color. They're not as dark. And that has a lot to do with, of course, fertilizer. To me, that's the key to keeping them moving, especially like in August and especially September. It's always like hot.
So water and soil always comes into the discussion with summertime. So we already talked soil and watering like crazy and fertilizing. So what about in the pruning and repotting? So are you repotting in your neck of the woods all year round because you can, or do you try to stick to summer when we would repot typically in Minnesota for the PAs?
Yeah, I try to repot. Of course, when everything starts warming up and they start actively growing, then I'm like, okay, I can repot, and I'll repot all the way up until maybe October, beginning of October, because it's still, right now in December, it's barely kind of like fall for us.
Right.
So, I'll kind of, wait maybe a month before it gets, the drastic temperature changes. Or when y'all would bring them inside. So I kind of, it's kind of, I will repot up until then, but I don't like to really touch them once it starts getting cold.
When you a lot of times our repotting, we can't repot a lot of trees in the, upper Midwest simply because then we don't have enough time afterwards for good quality aftercare and
recovery and yeah.
So you're kind of going by that rule of thumb as well. You just get to push it out till October, and we're like going, we're not doing that in October.
Yeah. I do it to, like I said, up to about maybe a month before the seasons really change and it starts getting colder.
So in the summer, then how much pruning are you doing? I noticed in your videos, and I noticed with your style, you have really thick PAs. So you nip and tuck them a lot, don't you? Do you let a lot of yours shoot out like crazy for that developmental stage, or are you just keeping them into that shape very consistently so they just keep getting thick and tight and ramified? What's kind of your philosophy on how you take care of your PAs?
Yeah, and I'll do it several ways. Some trees, like once I develop my branches, like even this one, I know it's kind of hard, you can't see, but once I develop the branches where they're at, then after that, I try not to let them get long. I don't like to let them even get more than an inch long. Because if you constantly trim them, you're going to shorten up those nodes. But if you let it grow, of course, they're going to have big gaps between the leaf sets. I'm always trimming. There's some trees that I feel like, okay, I need a branch here. I'm just going to let that grow, or if they pop at the base and I need some more taper in that trunk. I let those grow at the base, and sometimes I'll let them get long, but I really like to keep them trimmed. So I'll kind of train a little tree on the base, and then once it's kind of nice and thick, then I'll, remove that branch and then root that little tree.
when fall hits, now again, it hits, my 4 seasons are different than yours, but how are you adjusting? We're not at winter yet, and you got a warmish summer, fall, it sounds like, going way into September and October. So what are you doing in the fall then? Wrapping up some of those repots and still clipping, but what changes for the fall equinox?
It's like it's fall here right now in December. So what I'm doing is, I just kind of keep them trimmed, but I feel like the growth does slow down a little bit because I'm not watering as much and I'm not fertilizing. Yeah. So I just feel like, okay, they kind of I almost feel like that they do know that we're getting close to winter. So they're just kind of growing slow.
Sure.
I'll keep them trimmed, but there's some that I just kind of let go.
Is there any other work you do in the fall then? Everything's kind of slowing down. So is that kind of one of the slower seasons for you to just kind of just hang loose for a while?
Yeah, that's really it. And I'm just, I wish I had a greenhouse, and I keep saying every year is the year I'm going to build a greenhouse, but I will only use it really like end of December to maybe January and February.
You would really have to be careful with a greenhouse in that climate, wouldn't you?
Yeah, my dad built one. He had a big one that he built when I was growing up.
Yeah,
and he had a lot of shade cloth, and he built a lot of windows in that so the air can circulate. It was always excruciatingly hot. The stress of me trying to, bring them in, take them out, cover them up when it gets cold, and
it's a different kind of bonsai shuffle down there in Texas, but it's a little reassuring, I must say, Gilbert, that you actually do the shuffle a little bit because, we talk about that, well, quite jokingly, multiple times a year here in Minnesota.
Yeah, it happens to us, especially, like I said, we're more January, February, or like the cold sure. times, and maybe once in December. But
I don't want to forget to ask about wiring. Now, I don't know if you do any wiring in the fall because things are slowing down, but when is the best time to wire a PA? When do you typically do it? Now, I don't wire that much in general, but I've yet to wire a PA. I'm a little anxious about that and how it's going to maybe scar the tree and all that. I have watched your video on wiring once or twice, but share with us like wiring a PA and kind of the rules and regs for you and what's successful for you.
So if I'm going to wire a tree, or if I'm going to give a workshop, or a lecture demo, I will let the tree, I will withhold watering for about a week or two to let the tree dry out.
Sure.
So the branches aren't filled with so much water and they become a lot more flexible. So that's very important when it comes to wiring, is to let it dry out before you wire it.
Sure.
And then of course the branches do become real flexible, and you'll have less likely to crack a branch, or they are flexible. But I have done some pretty dramatic bends, and you're moving it and then you hear that crack and it's like, oh crap.
If I remember from your video right, you're using bigger gauge wire, or you double up a lot, right? So you have a little
I don't like to use, I like to use smaller wire. And because what I'm doing is, especially because the branches and the trunk are softer, it's not like a real wood. If you try to bend a big thick wire over it, you're going to damage a branch or the trunk. So I like to use, multiple smaller wires, maybe 2 or 3.
Sure.
And I'll wire it. And then of course, then I'll slowly bend it. But if I'm trying to create a drastic bend, I'll move it and then I'll wait a month and then I'll move it a little bit more or a little bit more. And
what really is the best? Is there a best time of year for PAs to wire, or can you really do it almost any time?
I say any time that it's actively growing. Like I said, from us it's springtime to
October.
October. Right. Yeah. So
let me transition to me. If I'm getting growth in December and January in my plant room here, because I have artificial lights literally 5 inches from the trees, the tree tips, and they're growing and they're putting out like 2 inches a month. I'm getting growth, right?
Yeah, so you're good.
I could wire right now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because there is no true dormancy. They do slow down when I have them outside and and it's cold.
Right.
But it doesn't. I mean, they're continuing to grow, and technically, you can fertilize as long as it's growing. And
Right. And I right now I've gone to just liquid Miracle Grow myself for the indoor stuff, and I do that every once in a while. So they're getting some fertilizer, they're getting plenty of warmth in here, and the best artificial light I can give. It's not the sun, it's not even indirect sun, but they sure seem to like it in here. So
no, and that's great. I actually have a whole big giant lighting system, indoor lighting system that was sent to me with the big box, the reflective stuff and everything, the box that it grows in. I have not set it up, and I plan to set it up this. I just don't have, the problem with me is I don't have room for it. And I'm like, I'm going to have to put it in the garage, but I can't fit anything else in my little office in here. I have all my trees all along the side of my house. I mean, my house is kind of long, but I have my whole backyard, and then this whole side, which is even bigger. So I'm like, I got a lot of room to expand. I keep telling my wife, I'm like, it's coming. I'm just letting you know it's coming.
That's great. And she's still supportive of that growth?
Yeah, she is. And I wish she was into it, but she just doesn't, Some people are, some people aren't. A lot of my bonsai friends are from the club, the same way. They're like, oh yeah, they're supportive, but they're just not into it.
My wife says the same thing. Well, you just go do your thing.
Yeah.
That's the support, because they just can't. If you get the bug like we do, no one can even relate. I mean, it's just different.
Yeah.
Before we move on to winter, because I think winter will be short and sweet of a subject, I wanted to back up because I didn't ask about this in the summer, which I don't know if that's the worst time of the year or not, but what kind of pests do you deal with PAs, or what pests, if any, like PAs?
There are a couple, and there's one of them that I just identified because I've been battling this insect for a long time. Okay. And it's taken me a while to figure out what it's actually called, because it looks like an earwig, and it's called a web spinner. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I have not heard of a web spinner. No.
So web spinners they look like, an earwig, right? They look like, they can get like maybe an inch long. They're skinny, they're black, they have the little, and I mean, I see those around, but I've noticed for years now, there would be some little webbing, in small little areas of webbing on the trunks. And then I look, and it looks like they're eating in the trunk. And this, particularly the cork bark trees, the trees that have the really gnarly trunks. And I'm like, what the heck is eating the trunks? And I couldn't figure it out. And I'd get my little scissors and I'd kind of poke around, and I would see these little earwig looking things, and they would crawl, they would move forward, move backwards. And what the heck is this? And I'm like, why would earwig? And I'm Googling it, like, do earwigs eat, dead, trunks of plants? And they're like, no, it's not an earwig. So finally, I got a hold of a bug guy, and I sent him pictures of it because I took pictures of it. He identified it, and yeah, it's a web spinner. So web spinners look like earwigs. Okay. They have these front little, paws or wherever they are, little hands, and they're kind of round. And what they do is they produce like a silk with those little hands. Okay. And they create a webbing and little tunnels, and they live inside, and they do nest in the wood, and they eat the wood and kind of burrow themselves in there. So that is there are pests that eat the leaves, or that like mealybugs and aphids, but these things are attacking the trunks. And so I've been trying to find out what they are. Now I finally identified them. Mealybugs are, I battle mealybugs all the time, but the good thing is, if you trim a lot, you don't really have to worry about mealybugs, because the mealybugs like the new growth at the tips. So I'm always trimming the new growth off. I keep them under control. Aphids like the new growth. Yeah. I will, anytime the springtime is kind of when they come out and really start attacking everything, I'll pick up a tree and I'll spray them with water. And if that doesn't work, then I'll use insecticidal soap. Some people will say, oh, you can use rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip. Alcohol especially if you spray a tree with alcohol, you're going to damage the leaves.
Yeah.
So insecticidal soap doesn't damage the leaves.
Yeah, I've been pretty comfortable using the insecticidal soap myself. That's all I've pretty much done. I'm trying to stay as chemical free as possible. So
yeah, mealybugs, aphids, web spinners, and this year I did battle a lot of caterpillars. I mean, I'll find them, especially my real small trees that have the small leaves, and they just kind of munch at those. And I'll literally like follow them, like I'll follow their trail. I could see their poop on the leaves, and then I'm like, okay, it's on this tree, it moved over here. And I pick them up and I'll transport them to the other side of the house.
It appears we all do a little bit of the bonsai shuffle, even if we're down in Texas. That weather they had a couple of years back was pretty nasty, with the cold and the ice and the snow, and it shut down a lot of the world, or a lot of the country anyway, with the lack of gas production and the gas lines that were all damaged. Tough stuff. Bonsai shuffle happening not just for you and I in the upper Midwest. So we move on to the winter solstice and then eventually the spring equinox. Now, with the winter solstice, like us in Minnesota, there's not a whole lot going on for Gilbert because, well, it's still warm, warmer than us for sure, but his trees are often in the shade for most of the day because the sun is a little bit lower for him as well, and they just are not growing as fast. For the spring equinox, he talks about how it takes a little while for the trees to get back acclimated into nice growing situation, and he gets a little bit more longer and leggier growth, which would be very similar to us if we're doing indoor growing with artificial light. Oftentimes we'll get that longer, leggier growth. He has the same thing in spring, and his trees are outside. The conversation led then to some defoliation and really how much watering and how he waters his PA collection. In case I forget later, don't forget to check out Little Jade Bonsai and all of Gilbert's really good work. I love his videos. His photography is really stunning, shows off his trees so brilliantly. He's got some great figurines on a lot of his trees with the Halloween time of year and Star Wars, just some fun stuff. Check out his stuff. You can check out a link right up there, and of course I'll have a link down in the description, and you can check out Gilbert anytime. Really worth a visit. My favorite one that he does is when he does the progressions from like 1 year to 5 to 10 years. He has all, you can see how fast you can grow a PA bonsai for yourself.
Shortest time of year, the least amount of light, especially up here in Minnesota. You're probably doing not a whole lot of anything with your trees. So what is the winter solstice like for you, for PAs?
My whole thing is I just monitor I leave them alone, and I just monitor the weather to make sure that it doesn't get down to freezing. And then of course, if it's like, oh, we're gonna have a light freeze, or then I will call my kids and I'm like, all right guys, let's get the blankets and put them on the ground and cover them, put rocks in front, and take my big ones in. And so I don't really do wintertime. I don't really do much, and because they are outside, and like I said, as long as it's above freezing, they're fine.
Slow season, although I mentioned earlier, I grow them year round because I can put them inside my house and get the grow lights, and they kind of chill for about a month or so, and then I crank things up a little bit and they start to grow. So it sounds like you have a nice little a little respite, a little break from all the intensity of your bonsai here in the winter months, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is, and it's kind of nice because I do have a lot of other hobbies, and I'm an artist, and so that's kind of like wintertime is when I start painting or drawing or doing something inside, and but yeah, so it's kind of it's definitely my break time.
Yeah, for sure. After you decorate your trees Halloweenish, then you kind of take a break for the rest of the world. I love some of your images of your trees with those characters in them. That's awesome.
yeah, I know. I like doing a lot of toy photography, and I love Star Wars, and so it's kind of super fun. I always try to do something with them.
When spring is around, no matter where you are, that means it's rebirth, newborn stuff ready to just take off, and the flushes of growth are ready to go. So what is spring like for you with PAs in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I usually, once it starts to kind of warm up, wintertime, they're on the ground. They're, they aren't getting much light, but they're not, I'm not trimming them.
No.
So whenever I'm like, okay, I think my weather guy will say, I think our last freeze is behind us, and okay. So I'll bring everything out on, on my benches on the side. And of course, everything just looks like a mess because, there's some weeds that have grown into the plants. And I usually do kind of just a quick trim. I'm not doing any fine detail trimming because whenever I do trim, I mean, I'm pretty detailed, meticulous when it comes to my trimming. On where I trim on the branch, on the leaf, above the leaves and everything. And so springtime, I'm just going. I'm Edward Scissorhands. I'm just trying to get the main shape down, and then from there, then that's when I start fertilizing, and then everything just kind of starts budding. But that is the time usually when if I'm going to defoliate and do a hard styling on a tree, then that's when I defoliate,
Okay. Yeah. And well, do you defoliate more times a year, or is that really when you try to defoliate is right there in spring to let that new flush grow?
Yeah, I think the springtime is the best time because, you have the whole rest of the year to develop all the leaves and, anything dramatic you're doing, any hard wiring, styling, defoliation, root pruning, I mean, it stresses the tree, and so anytime you do defoliate a tree, you're getting new growth everywhere. But the downside is the new growth that comes out is a lot thinner. It's not as, plump, and the leaves are real thin. So it takes a while for them to kind of gain strength and get that momentum going. So the springtime is definitely a time for defoliation.
So tell everybody then, when you do defoliate, now you mentioned not watering before you wire for 2 weeks. When you defoliate a PA, tell everybody how they have to take care of that tree then.
So I will only defoliate a tree if it's really healthy and it's established in its pot. I will not take a tree out of the pot, repot it, and defoliate and wire. I mean, you're stressing the hell out of the tree.
Yeah, major operations times 3. You're not going to do that.
Yeah. So if I'm going to defoliate, it's going to be a tree that's been in the pot, it's established in the pot, and it's healthy. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to mess with the roots. I'm just going to mess with the top, and I don't defoliate every tree. There's reasons why you defoliate. If I'm going to defoliate a tree, it's because I want to style a tree. And it's kind of hard to wire a tree that has all these leaves. And so I will defoliate everything, and it kind of helps you see the branch structure, the whole structure of the tree. So you can defoliate by just plucking the leaves off with your fingers or using scissors or a combination of both. I'll defoliate everything. And then that's kind of when I do my wiring, kind of get detailed with it. And then immediately after I defoliate, I fertilize because you removed everything, but you want to guarantee that all the branches, everything is going to pop. So I defoliate, I wire, I fertilize very heavy, and then that ensures all the growth is coming out of all the branches. Because with the Portulacaria, you will, I'm sure you've seen it too, where you get these branches that kind of have these nubs, right? Where it's a branch and there's no growth on it, and it's alive. That's because there wasn't enough energy going up into that branch when it was cut.
What's the watering regimen then? I've always, you have to, when you don't have a lot of foliage with a PA, do you run the risk of root rot if you have no leaves to support that water?
Well, a lot of it has to do. Like I said, if it's established in its pot and it's draining quickly, and the roots and everything look. The soil looks good. Then no, there's nothing wrong with, and it's like I said, it's healthy and it's already actively growing. Then no, I water as long as it's actively growing. And it's hot here. I'm watering every day.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There are some I actually like if we're going to go out of town, some of my smaller little mame size and shohin size trees, I will leave them sitting in a tray of water while we're gone. I'll
really?
fill it up. So they're it's up into the and a lot of times if I have a tree that you're watering and you feel like it's just not, it needs a boost.
Yeah.
I'll fertilize it and then I'll sit it in water, submerge it for, like a day. And,
really?
Yeah. And then
I don't think I've ever heard that with a PA or would have even thought of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, all the time. I mean, I do that and I never have any issues. The only time I've ever really had an issue with root rot and a tree was my logo tree that you were talking about, because I had that tree in that pot for I think like 6 or maybe 7 years.
Oh boy.
And I kept saying, I'm going to repot it. And I never did. And it was completely root bound. I mean, there was like no soil in there. I was fertilizing all my trees. I'm like, I noticed that the growth looked kind of scraggly. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to fertilize heavy. Yeah. And I did. And it shocked the tree.
But you were able to salvage those top 3 sections, right? And keep growing new trees.
Yeah,
right?
I cut and you can cut, like if a tree is developing root rot, it's going to come up from the bottom. So you can kind of cut and see where, okay, you could, I mean, because with root rot, I mean, once it starts coming up into the branches, they turn brown. You cut them and you can see it's kind of mushy,
After we wrapped up all of the summer, fall, winter, spring conversation, we talked a little bit about Frank Yi, we talked about cork bark, we talked about variegated style and how you have to take care of them. So some interesting stuff with the variegation and cork barks and Frank Yi. Gilbert then kind of wraps up the conversation with some talk about bonsai clubs and how it's a good thing for young bonsai enthusiasts to get involved with. Also, I asked him about some of his tips for newcomers to bonsai. Let's see what he had to say.
So you mentioned cork bark a while back, and I wanted to ask you about Frank Yi. Do you have any Frank Yi cuttings or heritage from him, or have you studied Frank at all? What are your thoughts on the cork barks?
Yeah, I have. One of my first one that I bought, the Godfather, I bought it because it was a cork bark. The trunk was really gnarly, but climate, fertilizer, sunlight and watering all plays into effect on how corky your trunk will get. So Frank waters, I hear he waters like once a week, and his trees are in full sun. Now, it's a certain part of California, and California does have a lot of different climates. Sure. Where he's at, the cork just thrives and it grows because he lets them dry out. Like I said, watering once a week.
Completely different than what you're doing.
Yeah. So the one that I have, it was very corky. And because I brought it here, I watered, daily fertilized, over time, it's gotten pretty smooh.
Really?
Yeah. So that's why I don't pay too much attention to, okay, is that a cork bark? Because I've seen a lot of cork bark trees that people have, and it's like, man, the trunk is real quirky, but I'm like, to me, it's all about the styling, right? How is it styled, and to kind of to enhance the cork or whatever. But
for sure,
so it's just again, that's my personal take on it. But I do have trees that I keep that are more cork bark that I keep a little in a certain area that gets more sun. And I've done experiments where I've put them in a higher shelf where they're getting like full sun. I'm watering once a week on them. Okay. Sure enough, they start getting more corky. The cork starts kind of coming out. So
it's like the stress of that dryness, and it's going through a little bit more tension in its life, and it's showing up with a corkier bark.
Yeah. So when you're watering, the water's flowing a lot quicker into the trunk, into the branches, and it's just, it's more smooth.
Pops it up and smooths it all out or something.
Yeah.
I should show you should I show you one of my trees?
Yeah.
On one of my recent videos for my channel, I worked on my variegated.
Oh yeah.
So I have a variegated PA, and I think this is also a descendant of a friend of mine who has gotten trees from Frank Yi. But it's a variegated. Yeah, it just this year, after like halfway through the summer, the PA is really weird in Minnesota. When we bring them outside, they have an adjustment period. And then all of a sudden, late in the summer, man, boy, then they go nuts. And of course, in August in Minnesota, we get a lot of humidity, just like you're getting like a lot of your summer, right? And so this thing just took off, and it's just been really funky. And it's it's variegated. And I've always heard variegated trees are a little bit more finicky and they grow different. And but I love the variegation on some species, and this is one of my fun little variegated PAs.
Yeah, no, that's nice. Well, it looks evenly variegated, and I say that because while we're talking about variegated, yeah, and I like the shape of it and kind of where it's going, and yeah,
it's in development, right?
Yeah, everything always is. One of the over the years that I've been kind of working on these, I've always, if I've seen one at Walmart or wherever, and I'll buy one. I treat all my trees the same. I end up fertilizing the same, watering the same. I noticed one year I was just kind of in and out. I was just like a robot, just water, fertilize, trim. I wasn't really paying attention to a lot of them. And I'm like, where the hell did those fertilized trees go? Like, I don't know where they... Like, I'm looking through all my trees. I'm like, where's the where's the variegated ones that I and I'm saying fertilized because all I did was fertilize.
Right.
Well,
did they lose their variegation?
They did. And so you can, if you fertilize a lot of a variegated, I did an experiment this summer too, where if you fertilize and take one and just add a lot of Osmocote, add a lot of liquid Miracle-Gro, fertilize it, it's going to start turning solid green. Some people talk about, they say, oh, it's because every variegated has the solid gene in it, so it's called a sport, right? So the sport, which is the solid green one, comes out, was to cut that off. That's not, to me, I feel like that's not true. Because I bought one that was completely variegated, took pictures of it, I fertilized it, and it wasn't like, a solid green popped out. Everything slowly started turning green.
Great.
And it completely turned all green. And so then I thought, okay, I turned it upside down, removed all the Osmocote. I set it aside. I didn't water it. I didn't fertilize it.
Right.
But I watered it. Sure enough, it starts getting lighter and lighter and lighter again. So there's one variegated that I have. I only have one because it's the one I treat differently. Yeah. That I won't fertilize, and I just water it.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to wrap up our discussion here. So if someone's new to bonsai, one, you're a part of a club, so I want your thoughts on being a part of a club again. And then just, what are your 2 or 3 things of advice for new people into bonsai and why PA would be a good choice for them? So first, let's clubs. You've seen like you're pretty, a club has been good for you.
Yeah, you can only learn so much through YouTube videos and, reading books. I bought books and, a lot of books in the beginning. But the good thing about clubs is you have workshops, and you have guest speakers that come in, and I learned a lot with workshops because I would wire a tree and I would design a lot of my beginning trees. They were real 2D, because that's what I'm looking at a photo,
Right.
Where's the back? There's no back branches. This thing is just flat, it's just branches going out the side. I'm like,
that's right.
So they showed me a lot of, the proper way to wire, just a lot of things that you can only learn kind of in person, and I talk about my friend David Whitaker because, when I first joined, I had my little juniper and he's like, oh, so you're new. And I said, yeah, I just have one juniper. And he's like, oh, come by my house. I'll give you a treat. He says, I want to, kind of help you out. So that's kind of been my thing too, because people that come and find me and they're interested, I just want to come by and see my trees. I'm like, I'll give them a tree, give them something to start with. it's just amazing because the people we're all focused on our plants, and it's like, man, you look around and everybody has the same drive you do for plants, for bonsai. And
join a club, get into a workshop, and have more than one tree. What are some other things? What are some other words of wisdom from the little Jade bonsai guy?
Well, it's like you said, I always like to say too that you can't just have one tree, because you can almost kill it with too much care. I see, and I did that at the beginning. I had a few trees. I would pot it, and then I would buy another pot, and I'm like, okay, I want this tree in that pot. So I would dig it up, and now I'm always with Portulacaria afra. They grow so quickly, they root so easily. Mm-hmm. So, I don't even know how many trees I have now. Maybe 500, somewhere in there. For me now, there's always something to trim. There's always something to work on.
Absolutely.
If I'm stressed, I go out to my trees and I'm always trimming because they grow quickly, So, the Portulacaria afra is, if you have the capacity to it, you do have an outside patio or you have a house, and yeah, I highly recommend that species because, like I said, it roots easily, it grows quickly. And
yeah, I love that. I love how if you can get a tree and you make some early cuts on it and style it, put those cuttings into some more soil, and you're going to have a lot of trees to work on, and they grow so fast. And so I completely agree. I think it's a fantastic variety, and we don't all have to have the California or Utah junipers. We don't all have to have the Japanese black pines or the trident maples. I think the PAs, I don't know, they're in a little world of their own, but I think they're quite worthy of the bonsai attention.
Yeah, and one last thing, when it comes to bonsai, do what makes you. I always say, do what makes you happy. If you have a tree and you're asking for advice, and they say cut this branch, you need to cut this branch, and if you don't want to cut it, you don't have to cut it. It's your tree, and it's what makes you happy, and so I always say just grow your trees. There are rules and things if you want to follow the rules for styling and all that, but do what makes you happy.
I couldn't agree with you more. They've always said beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and there's so much subjectivity to this craft, and you're going to get one tree and bring it to this professional, that professional, you and me, and we're going to see it 4 different ways. And so in the end, you're going to live with your tree. You're going to be loving that tree. So, in the end, do what you feel is going to be all right.
Yeah.
Which you're going to like. I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I still appreciate your time. And when I do travel, I look to do more traveling, and whenever I travel now, I really want to see what bonsai enthusiasts can I go bug for a while. So if I'm ever in your neck of the woods, I'll see if you're available. I'd love to come see your trees in person, but
absolutely. And if anybody ever is, I'm always, like I said, I love talking trees.
Yeah, just me too. That's why I spend so much time doing it. I just love it. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much. Of course, your Little Jade Bonsai YouTube channel. You haven't had a new video for quite a while, but always looking forward to your videos. And I see some of your reels pop up on other formats, of course, here and there. So keep up the great work. And I aspire to take some tree pictures just like you one day. And you're definitely a photographer mentor for me. I like your stuff a lot.
Well, man, I appreciate it. And thanks for having me. And I'm glad we finally were able to connect.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Have a good holiday season, and may your PAs treat you well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. You too.
All right. Good night. Take care, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Many thanks to Gilbert Cantu of Little Jade Bonsai. Can't thank him enough for spending the time with me just chatting about bonsai. If you all know me a little bit, I just love to talk about bonsai. So the more people I meet and the more we go back and forth, whether he does stuff in Texas and I do stuff in Minnesota, completely differently or there's some things similar. I just think we can all get some great little nuggets on how to get the best results for our trees. So PAs can be grown anywhere in the world, we've found out, and you can have a lot of success. So a lot of great information from Gilbert. So can't thank you enough, Gilbert, for all of your time. I really love my PAs, and I think you would love them as well. So check it out. Grab some PAs from wherever you can get them and do some experimentation. They grow pretty easy. They grow pretty fast. You can do some wiring with them. You can defoliate the PAs. They're just very, very versatile. If you don't water them as often as your other trees, it's not going to be terribly detrimental. It will tell you when it's starting to wilt if you did wait too long. Most of the time in the summer in my backyard in Minnesota, I'm watering every single day. In the plant room every 2 to 3 days because it's getting dry and you just take care of them. So it's just a very, very fun species. Thanks again to Gilbert, and thanks to you for checking this one out. Again, if you want the full Up North Bonsai podcast, don't forget to check that out on my website, bonsaiacres.com. And it's all sponsored or brought to you by Acast podcast. So you can check that out on Acast and look up North Bonsai. You can find it that way as well. And of course, the link will be right down here at the bottom. And I've linked up Little Jade Bonsai as well for you for Gilbert. Thanks, everybody. Hey, take care of you. Take care of your bonsai. And we'll catch you very soon on the next one.